one-man band panel session here at Freeplay. I hope Freeplay's been good for you guys so far. My name is Rennison. I'm the founder of Tin Man Games, a small indie here in Melbourne. I do iPhone and iPad games, and I'm chairing today's discussion panel. I'm completely honoured to be in the fine company of four of the most prominent indies in Victoria at the moment. So I'll just introduce each of them for you. Okay, first up we have Seon Rozenblum. Seon has been running Sector 3 games since 2007 and has been creating and self-publishing a range of titles on OS X, Windows, online and iDevices. Seon recently sold a controlling stake of his company to Trickstar Games and has now expanded his development platforms to include Xbox 360, PS3, Wii, and is soon to release the first of his original indie titles on these platforms. Next up we have Andrew Goulding at the end. Andrew's worked at 4 games companies in Australia and the UK before starting his own company, Rennison, to provide contract game development support and devote more time to making the kind of games he really wants to play. Andrew recently released his first major original game, a point-and-click adventure by the name of Jolly Rover, which you can see in Xperia Media at the moment, on Steam and various other digital distribution platforms. Next up, next to me here is Chris Watts. Chris is a designer and producer in the local Melbourne area and works together with other talents to create fun games for platforms like iPhone and Facebook. Currently supported by the NICE program, is that how you pronounce it? NICE? Yeah. And his own time and investment, Chris aims to create a small indie studio that can focus on creating high-quality, downloadable games in the years to come. And finally, we have Matt Hall, just here. Matt runs ClickTalk, an independent game development company located on a sheep farm in rural Australia. A veteran of the Australian game development industry, Matt is a game developer who's been dreaming about games since, well, forever. He has previously been employed at Tantalus and Big Ant Studios, and his varied career includes positions as a programmer, designer, artist, associate producer, and chief technical officer. So what we're going to do, we have a bunch of topics that we'd like to talk about today in relation to being a one-man band. And so I will fire questions at these guys and leave them open to discuss the points. If you do have a question relating to one of the topics, if you just want to raise your hand, we'll try and get to you. But as what happens with these things, sometimes time can rattle on, so we want to cover as much ground as possible within the next hour. So, guys, being in a one-man band, being an indie developer, you have to do everything. You have to wear lots of hats. And the first sort of question that I want to put to you is, how do you cope with this? Now, Seon, I know you've moved away from being in a one-man band. Was this one of the reasons why you decided to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my biggest struggles, especially as I got bigger, as the business grew, was that my day had to split up between, anywhere between 9 and 10 different unique type of tasks, from obviously designing, coding, any type of art, sound work. Then I had to really focus on marketing, had to focus on customer support, because there's more to solve, more questions, queries, issues I had. Then, of course, QA. It's really hard to, I had a lot of other people externally trying to help me with QA, but the bottom line was I had to QA all my games myself. And then any type of outsourcing work I did, also had to play the role of the manager, coordinate all of that. So one of the things that I felt like I was always dividing my time. I felt like I had to divide my time, and I was always skimping on each task because I knew that, okay, I'll give myself 2 hours to get this done, and if it was done or not, either way I had to move on to something else. So it was a real big problem, and it really interrupted my creativity, because I felt like I could only pick tasks to do that would fit within the time frame I had to work in. It was a bit of a problem. It also led to a lot of indecision about choices I could make from the design point of view, and the crossover of the fact that I might be doing design work right now, but the other hats were talking in my head saying, well, hang on, if you make that creative decision, that's going to cost you for marketing, that's going to cost you for outsourcing. And so I constantly had this play in my head about the right choices to make. which can be good, can lead to really strong decisions and not procrastinating. Procrastinating is a real killer when you look at yourself. But yeah, I just felt like most of the time I was thinking. That's one of the reasons I wanted to, look at not becoming one more game. One really important thing when you're working by yourself though, you've got 24 hours in every day. It's not like you're going to the office for 8 hours. And you can actually do a lot of winding up of tasks in 24 hours. Sleep's not important.
I'd just like to add to that. It's really interesting when you say that that you have to wear a lot of hats and that affects your creativity. But I find that if everyone gets in this because they're a designer and they want to design something, and if you have to wear the producer hat, and it can affect your design in good ways. And one example of this is in Jolly Rover. I decided to develop a commentary, and that was the producer part of me saying, "Hey, this is going to be really cheap. We can do this really quickly, and it's going to hopefully be a feature that people might like and increase the longevity of the game." So, and also we had collectibles in the game, so the producer had also piped up and said, "Hey, we can reuse the concept art that we've got and all the assets that we've already got, and for pretty much zero cost and just a bit of time." And then the marketing part of me said, "Hey, this kind of thing could be marketed as a feature." So I think having that lack of overhead in communication between the three hats in your department can be really useful.
I think that will make my games better, just trying to, as efficiently as possible. You can evaluate things very quickly. Think about it from this perspective, without ever having to have a meeting. Yeah. It can be very fast at making your game better.
Yeah, it's also good from a kind of a growing and a kind of a learning experience as well. As a designer, you kind of focus on that one thing, which is what is best for my game. Whereas from a business perspective, you're still saying what is best for my game, but what is feasible for my game. It's very, very easy for a designer to overblow his ideas or go into a feature creep. Whereas with the business side of the many hats that you wear, you go, I've scheduled that this is going to take so many weeks. What can I do in that time, and what's really realistic, without making you or the people that you've subcontracted to do 16 hours a day work,
So have you guys got any stories where you've actually bitten off more than you can chew?
I think as indie developers, we generally do bite off more than we can chew. And I didn't look for ways to make the work I did more efficient. I looked for ways to find out how to get more hours in the day. Because when it comes down to creativity, you do need a bit of lag to be able to sort of process ideas and looking at ways that you can sort of break up your day into, say, because you're indie, you don't have to do the 9 to 5 with the morning and afternoon broken up by lunch. You could do maybe 3 blocks of work, which is morning tea, and then your afternoon shift, and then your night shift. And that's a good way of getting maybe an extra 2 or 3 hours out of the day, and not feeling totally burnt out by the end of it.
And what about when you've got a family life as well, Andrew?
Yeah, well that can be quite difficult. You've got, especially, I've seemed to have gone through 2 game development cycles where I've had children under 1 that are getting up constantly at night, and that lack of sleep can be very difficult to be creative and efficient at the same time. But also being indie, you can sleep when you need to sleep and work when you need to work, and that flexibility is fantastic. And that's just not something you get when you're working for an employer that seems to think that you're most efficient between 9 and 5, not actually what work you're getting done.
I don't think I've ever actually bitten off more than I can chew, because as an indie, it's not so much what can you chew, but how long does it take to actually finish it off. And I think most of us tend to have all the time in the world, so to speak. There's no one really breathing
except for yourself.
Yeah, that's right. And you have to get money in the end or release the game. With little things, like my recently released, I mean, I'm not sure how many you've seen it, but it has these massive patchworks of these collages containing like 1,000 images each, and it took me probably 2 months to finish the first one, and then I suddenly realised I had to do 9 more. But each time I just sized it up and just did one at a day, and eventually just finished it off. But then after that project, I immediately went, what's the smallest amount of time I can make a game in? And just did it that way.
There was about 18 months ago, I went to do a freeware project because I wanted to kind of increase my design skills and create something really nice for a folio. This was before I wanted to create an indie studio, and I just wanted to get a design job. So I created this freeware project, and it was kind of this isometric 3D Diablo-esque kind of thing. Now, 3D is incredibly complex when it comes to artwork as opposed to 2D, because 2D involves sprites and sprite animation, whereas 3D involves modelling, texturing, rigging, animation. And additional to that, the gameplay and the size required for a good dungeon crawler demo, even if it's a vertical slice, is also quite substantial as well. So I found myself basically spending 6 months writing a design document, getting a very crap demo out, and just basically having to scrap it, especially being a freeware project, because you have people working all over the world trying to do this ambitious kind of project. And when you've got 12 people all with different agendas, it just eventually crumbles.
Cool, thanks guys. Okay, so you might be the best game designer in the world, but you're not always the best businessman. So I'd like you to talk about how you guys have managed the business side of things and how you've got your head around all the things that you need to know in order to run a successful business. And that includes funding as well, because I mean, funding is important. I know there's both Andrew, Chris, and myself have Film Victoria funding, which has been very useful. Chris, I mean, you've found funding from other directions as well, from the NEAT scheme. So, you know, can you tell us a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, after releasing Mole on the iPhone, I decided that I really wanted to consolidate this indie kind of business and trying to grow it in earnest. So I went to NEAT. NEAT stands for New Enterprise Initiative Scheme. It's an initiative by the federal government, and it's been around for a very long time. Basically, if you're on New Start and if you're on it for about 3 months, an avenue opens up for you to opt into NEAT, which is starting a small business. It's a lot of paperwork, and it's a big kind of just a paperwork hassle, but you basically do a 6-week course in a small business in which you write out a business plan. You learn the fundamentals of small business, so this doesn't apply to the games industry. This is just very basic, logical kind of small business sense. And afterwards, if your budget and your business plan gets approved, you're in. And you get some support once every fortnight. It's the exact same amount as New Start. Only you don't have to go to Centrelink every 2 weeks. You are bound every 3 months by a financial quarter, so you do need to make the money that you said you were going to make. There's a 20% leeway in that, but if you don't make that money for whatever reason, you're off it. You can still run your business, but you're not going to get help from them. And if you go straight back onto New Start, I'm sure they want to kill you.
From my experience, the business side of things was really a trial by fire. I knew how to make games, and I knew how to make games from a number of different perspectives: the design, the programming, the production, and even the testing. But the business side is just kind of something that it was almost an obstacle. It's just like this is just what you've got to do, and you don't have a choice. You either want to get your game done or you want to get your game done. So if you don't do the business stuff, it doesn't come out. So faced with that choice, you just learn to do what you need to do, and that includes reading and understanding grant forms, filling that kind of stuff in, understanding the